Awesome.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do a little introduction of Tracey Glover. Tracey Winter Glover. Do you use your whole?
Sometimes.
Okay, so Tracey.
I just because I don't really like the name Tracey, so I throw in my middle name when I can. But either.
Oh, your middle name is Winter.
Yeah, I was born on the first day of winter. So.
Oh, that's so nice. Okay, all right. Well, so Tracey Winter Glover. I want to say you're the founder of ARC.
Yeah, co-founder and executive director, and like the only remaining co-founder.
Okay, so you're the last person standing. Exactly. I know what that's like.
Yeah,
been there. So and so I had the pleasure of meeting Tracey when she actually. I was so honored to have Tracey ask me to come out to Alabama, Mobile, Alabama, to speak on food justice. And so that was the beginning of a wonderful friendship. She didn't even have Sweet Peeps microsanction. Well, she did and she didn't. At the time, she just had a whole lot of animals who she was taken care of, and I'm not going to take credit for you having a micro sanctuary or anything like that. However, I do remember saying, you might as well just like have a name and have a sanctuary, like name it.
It is totally your fault.
It's definitely a micro sanctuary in everything but name at the time. So and I got to meet all the wonderful, lovely cats and the dog and the 8 at the time chickens. So there are many, many more chickens now, which is
your fault.
Okay, I'll take credit. So I just wanted to have you speak on this issue because I feel like you, as somebody who has rescued chickens from the egg industry, I feel like you have like some insight into this whole industry that a lot of folks may not have. And so I wanted to just go ahead and start asking you a few questions. We want to ask for your expertise in some things, and then we also want to open up the floor for the audience to ask any questions that they may have as well. And again, welcome to the folks who are joining us on Clubhouse as well as Facebook Live. Hello to everyone who is joining us today, whatever time it is, wherever you are.
Yeah,
technically tonight.
So I wanted to ask, first and foremost, what are the circumstances that led to you ending up like adopting, let's say, your first batch, your first group of chickens?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you so much for inviting me to be with you all tonight. I'm I love everything that you're doing, and I'm just so very honored to get to be a part of it. So really, thank you so much for having me, and then for doing this. So before I took in any chickens, I always sort of had it in the back of my mind that at some point I wanted to, do some direct care for chickens, take in some chickens, because when I took in my chickens, I'd been vegan.
I'm sorry. Can you unmute yourself because you're muted?
I was literally just about to say that.
Let's wait.
From Clubhouse.
Oh, I'm muted on Clubhouse. Oh, and I can unmute myself.
Yeah.
Yes, I can. Okay. Sorry. Good. Are we good?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. Can I just repeat? I'll just repeat that briefly. Just super grateful to be here. The Afro-Vegan Society is doing amazing work, and you're amazing people, and I am really just honored to get to be a part of it. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
So to answer your question, okay, so before I even ever took in the chickens, I had it in the back of my mind for a long time that I wanted at some point to rescue chickens. I'd been vegan for something like 15 years, and I was running ARC, which is this local animal rights group, and I knew that the vast majority of the animals sorry, we're about to have a cat walk across the screen. I knew that the vast majority of animals that we confine and kill and eat in this country are chickens, and that their suffering is some of the most egregious. Can I just pause real quick and ask you if my sound's okay? Because I'm hearing reverb myself, but do I sound okay to you all?
You sound great.
Okay, sorry. So I knew, and that was like, part of why I went vegan. And actually, before I even went full vegan, I stopped eating chickens before I even stopped eating like cows, because I knew that their suffering was so egregious, and that we just, that so many lives are lost. You can get a lot more meals out of one cow, whereas like a basket of wings is like 6 lives. And so I had stopped eating them a long time ago, and they were always a part of my advocacy. But honestly, and Brenda and I talked a little bit about this earlier, but honestly, even as an animal activist vegan, I didn't know chickens. I wasn't particularly interested in them. Like if I would go visit a sanctuary, I wanted to visit with the cows and the pigs and the goats. And, I was like, oh, there's chickens. Okay. And I wasn't really excited to go visit with the chickens. And I just felt that my own advocacy would be stronger for them if I knew them as individuals. So in the back of my mind, I'm sorry, I realized that was all a very long preface to how I actually adopted my first group of chickens. So with that kind of in the background, it was pretty random. I just saw a post on Facebook in January of 2019. There was a chicken farm in Colorado, a large chicken farm, although I think they called themselves all natural or one of those things. But it was a farm in quotes that had something like 40,000 birds. They went bankrupt, and they turned off the heat, and they stopped feeding them, and they were just going to claim the losses with their insurance. And that's totally legal because chickens have no legal protection in this country.
Wow.
And so a local sanctuary found out about it and sort of put a call out, and like the owner of the farm said that the sanctuary could come in and they could take as many birds as they wanted. And so activists went in and they were rescuing birds, but they could only rescue as many as they had like commitments for homes for. And so, it was like a very urgent call that I saw on Facebook, like, I can rescue this bird if somebody steps up, and this bird will not be rescued if somebody doesn't step up. It wasn't like they'd already been rescued, so there was just this urgency. And I think initially I just shared the post in my community, and then a couple of local people said that they would adopt. And I was like, well, if you can do it, I have a shed. And so I just decided I would convert my shed into like a makeshift chicken coop. And I think I originally said I would keep 2. And then there were some other people who had said that they were going to take some of them. And I had committed to like, this community taking like 10 or 12 or something. And then several people decided that they couldn't do it, but I'd already committed. So that was really how I ended up with my original 8. And then my whole life just changed after that in many ways. But that's how it started.
Wow, what a story.
Sorry.
Do you still speak to those people who backed out? Like, are they still friends?
Yeah. I feel like there are some people maybe I didn't know personally so I don't know what happened to some of them, but at least, there's a couple of people I know who backed out who I'm still friends with. And really, it's thanks to them that I ended up with like all these wonderful chicken people in my life. So no hard feelings.
Okay. Well, I won't be mad at them for you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate though that you would have been.
Uh-huh.
And then I will just say too, actually, there's a video footage of the rescue that you can find online. If you Google like bankrupt Colorado chicken farm,
wow.
I'm pretty sure it's easy to find. And some of it, Brenda knows I did a short documentary. Brenda knows because I interviewed her for it, and she's the highlight. So you might want to, check that out. But there's some of the footage of that rescue in the documentary, as well as like some of the people who actually did the rescuing, went into the sheds, and I can't even imagine what that experience was like. But great, so grateful for everybody involved. Uh-oh, now I'm not hearing you, Jamila. Sorry. Oh. Now I'm not hearing you.
Unmute. We're going to get the hang of this at some point. On StreamYard.
Okay.
So I muted my
now I can.
I muted my mic on here.
Yeah.
So I can on Clubhouse.
Yeah. Okay. And now I'm listening on Clubhouse, but it's not. Yeah. But it's quiet, so I'm gonna kind of lean in. Okay.
Okay, cool. No problem. I feel you on that.
I'm sorry. I think it's quiet because I have my earbud in, and it's like having an earplug.
Exactly. But yes, so thank y'all for bearing with me. If I'm like, y'all can't hear me, please let us know in the comments. But our next question would be like, what are the personalities of chickens? A lot of people don't. I've been lucky in my life where I've had friends who house chickens, so I've seen a few personalities, and they are a rambunctious bunch. But let us know, like, what are the personalities like with the chickens that you house?
Yeah. The truth is that they really are such individuals. Like, I feel like, okay, there's some generalizations I'll make, but then I feel like and I might actually go grab one right now, because I do have happen to have a chicken in the house right now, Simmy. But so let me some sort of general observations about their personalities first. Like, they are, I would say, okay, when food is involved, they are definitely rambunctious. It can get a little crazy here. But at other times, they're really, really gentle, and it's like very peaceful spending time with them. When they're like, just going through the day. So they have like I have a few different flocks, and they all have like their different little areas in their runs. Like, there are areas where they can dust bathe. There are areas where they can like scratch around at the leaves and peck, looking for insects, and just like all these different little areas. And when I watch them kind of like wander around during the day, just like living their lives, doing whatever they feel like doing with their friends, it's just like this amazingly peaceful experience. And their sweet little sounds, like when they're happy, they talk all the time. They talk to each other. They talk to me. And then, so, generally I would say that they're very just peaceful and sweet. Oh, and they're really funny. I don't even know exactly like how to explain why they're so funny. They're just funny. The way they run is funny. The way that they're super curious, and when they like see something new, or they are so expressive. Their little faces are super expressive, and it's just like adorable. And then they're really like such individuals. Like, some are more shy than others. Some are super, like, I have a couple that are, I would say they're all very social. Like, as a species, they're very social. And if you treat them with kindness, and you're really, and you're around them a lot, I think, the more they're around people, the more comfortable they are with people, and especially, people who are friendly and nice. So I would say they're all social, but some are like incredibly like shocked. It still really shocks me kind of how social, like, I was telling Brenda, I think about Fanny earlier, but like Fanny is one of the original Colorado girls. And from when she was a baby, so they came to me when they were like 8 weeks old, which is the age that they get sent to slaughter at. And they were basically at that age. In the meat industry, not in the egg industry, but in the meat industry, just to clarify that. So but Fanny, from like when she first got to me, she would just at first I couldn't tell them apart because they're all white, and they looked identical to me. And but I always knew it was Fanny because Fanny was the one who would just like glued to my leg, or if I sat down, she'd just like fly right up and get in my lap. And at this point, you know, besides like their personalities, just even looking at them, like, all their little faces are different. Their eyes are different. Their voices are different. You know, I think it's just so much like dogs and cats that they really have these individual personalities. But they are, I think, just as a species, very social, very curious. I kind of want to just see if I can I just grab Simi real quick so you can meet Simi?
It would be an honor, please. Ooh, okay.
And we'll just describe Simi to the folks on Clubhouse.
And there's a cat. Okay, so let's see.
Simi is definitely a chicken for all you Clubhouse folks.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so this is Simi.
Oh,
little face. And I'm really sorry. I don't mean to start doing like this like baby talk thing. I kind of unconsciously fall into it.
Oh,
this baby.
We cannot blame you.
That's my thing. I feel like they all actually really like to have their heads pet, and they will all kind of. Although, see, she sees you all, so she's like, "Who are you?"
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, she's just like very aware that you're there. But normally, if I give her a little head rub like that, like she'll just take a little nap.
Oh my God.
She sleeps inside because she was at a factory farm in Georgia that was hit by a tornado, and tens of thousands of birds were killed in the tornado, but there were like many survivors, and the corporate owner sent a demolition crew in to like pick up the wreckage, including live animals. And it was another situation where activists went in and rescued the birds that they could, but the activists were like getting arrested. And so I'm not exactly sure like how they managed to. I think that they managed to rescue some birds before they were thrown off for trespassing. And I ended up with 6, including Simi. And when Simi got here, she had a broken leg, and she's like all better now. She walks, but she walks with like a kind of a funny little limp. And so she just has some special needs, and so she sleeps inside, and she goes out in a yard with a friend during the day. Okay, I'm gonna let her go back to her.
Bye, Simi.
Bye, Simi. Adorbs. Thank you for that, Tracey.
So, and Simi, just real quick, like personality. Simi is like she's the sweetest, like innocent little baby, but she'll tell you when she's not happy. Like if I bring in one of the other chicken people, she's like fine with the roosters, but if I bring in another girl, like another hen, she actually gets that kind of that look like Jamila just got. Like she kind of like and then she'll start like yelling about it until I remove the other girl, because this is her house.
She's a little catty, huh?
She has a little sass in her.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Nice.
So, yeah. I could talk all day about their personalities, but I
would love to talk about the chickens all day, honestly, because that's the part I like.
Yes.
But I want to talk some about the egg industry.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about what you know of what these egg-laying hens actually go through who are in the egg industry?
Yeah. So egg-laying hens have one of the worst lives of all farmed animals. They like the vast majority, I can't remember if it's like 95, 96%, something like that, of of animal products that we get generally come from factory farms, and that includes eggs. So most eggs are coming from hens who are kept in battery cages. But so they all start in the industry, like they all start, they're incubated. They don't even like their mom doesn't even get to, like sit on them like they would in the wild. So they're all like the fertilized eggs are collected. They're incubated for like 21 days until they hatch. And then, so the first tragedy of the egg industry really is, or maybe actually just not even letting them like sit with their moms is the first tragedy. But because they will actually like mama hens will communicate with their chicks when they're still in the egg. So they're deprived of that first experience. And mother hens are like amazing moms. So they just, the adult hens don't get to have that experience and the chicks never have that experience. So they're incubated for like 21 days, then they're hatched, and then they are sexed. So right at the hatchery, there are workers who flip them and determine if they're male or female. And the females go on one conveyor belt destined for the egg industry. The males go down another conveyor belt destined to be killed because they're useless to the egg industry, right? Because there are two main breeds of chickens in the industry. One is used for eggs and one is used for meat. And they're just very, very different. So most of my chickens actually were bred for the meat industry, and they're bred to be huge and to have, as particularly huge breasts because we like breast meat. So chickens in the egg industry, they aren't used for meat. So, a male can't lay eggs and they're not basically big enough to be used for meat. So they're just killed as soon as they're sexed, basically as soon as they're hatched, fluffy little baby chicks. And the most common ways of killing them are maceration and gassing. So
can you explain what maceration is, as unpleasant as that is?
Yeah. Basically they're put in a grinder alive and they are ground up alive. It's the sort of thing I feel like it's hard to talk about because I think it's hard not to sound like an extremist when you talk about it because it's such an extreme practice. But you can, like before I went vegan, this was one of the things that I was like, well, that can't be. Like, I just couldn't believe that was real. And I thought people who talked about it, like, that's just wrong. You just must be wrong. How could that possibly be? How could we live in a society where that would be legal? And really before I went vegan, I did like a ton of research on sites like the USDA's website. And it was basically like everything that I had ever heard from organizations like PETA, who people might be suspicious of because they have an agenda or whatever, right? I went to like the USDA's website and found the exact same information. That's just a standard industry practice. So after they're sexed, the females then go to like a raising facility, like they go to the factory farm where they're basically, most of them are going to facilities with battery cages. So they go to these like windowless sheds, right? And battery cages are, it's a battery of cages. So they're wire cages. The most common method is to put like 4 or 5 hens in a wire cage that's about the size of a folded up newspaper. So they're in these wire cages for their whole lives, which is in the egg industry, something like 18 to 24 months before a hen is considered, quote, spent. And basically that is like, so for her short lifespan and she could naturally live, a hen can naturally live like 8 to 10 years. But in the industry for her whole short life, she's going to be in this battery cage. So they're on their feet are just straight on wire for their whole lives. They can't spread their wings for their whole lives. The battery cages are stacked on top of each other. So in all but the top cage, they spend their lives having the birds above them urinate and defecate on them. During this time, it's like they live to be 18 to 24 months. And then they're slaughtered if they live that long, if they don't develop health issues in the meantime and die. And many do die, before they're sent to slaughter. Just as like a little side note, having hens here, I've come to learn firsthand, like so many of the different problems that hens can have laying eggs, like even in ideal conditions, they can have problems. And then here, when problems arise, like I treat those issues. But I think about like every time I have a health emergency here that's related to egg laying, like a few weeks ago, one of my hens, I went out to bring them in for the night. It was one of the hens who sleeps inside at night. And I went to bring her in for the night. And it was like 5 minutes after my vet's office had closed, of course. And she had prolapsed, trying to lay her very first egg. So I didn't even have any sign that she was like anytime I have a hen who has trouble laying, they go to the vet and they get this hormonal treatment that prevents their bodies from forming eggs so that they won't continue to have those health issues. But this was like the very first egg she ever tried to lay. And, she was just suffering. She was in pain. She just kept like pushing, trying to get the egg out. But it was like, and many hens will die of this condition, right? So of course I fortunately have like a really wonderful community of vegans with chickens who walked me through how to help her that night. And then in the morning, I brought her to the vet. He was able to remove the egg, and I got her that hormonal implant. We put her on antibiotics. I put her on pain. I gave her actually pain meds that night and anti-inflammatories, and she's fine. But but that is like one of, just this season alone, like in spring, they start their laying cycle, sort of like kicks in again. Like there are periods during the year that they don't lay as much. But just since this spring, I've had like so many egg related problems. And every time I have one and we deal with it, I think about all of the hens in like an industrial setting who experience something like that. And nobody is going to they're not going to the vet. So anytime a hen in that setting experiences a prolapse or there are just like so many common egg related health problems that they can have. And again, with the proper treatment, they can survive and recover, but without that, they'll just die a painful death. So the hens, though, who do survive the 18 to 24 months, laying eggs like almost every day, it takes so much out of her body to lay an egg. Like the shell of an egg is mostly calcium, and that calcium is being, drawn from their bones. Health problems like osteoporosis are really common, broken bones. And by the end of like the 18 to 24 month period, they stop laying. Basically their body, they don't have any more calcium in their bones to produce eggs. And at that point, their production slows. And when their production slows, then they, just like chickens from the meat industry, like at this point, then the whole process is the same. Workers come in, they violently grab them, they throw them into cages on trucks, which like probably, most of us have seen those horrible trucks on the highway. They then get to the slaughter facility. And again, like, at this point, the fate of an egg laying hen or a chicken raised for meat is the same. They're taken off the trucks. The most common methods of killing them at the slaughterhouse is that they're shackled up. They're like shackled upside down. So workers, and again, there's such an incentive for workers just to move as fast as possible, which is also part of why it's such a dangerous industry for the workers themselves. Like injuries are so common in this industry because they are pressured by the corporate owners to just move as quickly as possible, which means that, you're taking these birds who have osteoporosis, like really fragile bones, and shackling them as quickly as possible. So you just know that this is like a violent and painful process. And then they are dragged through an electric bath that's supposed to stun them before they have their throats slit, and are then dunked in scalding water to defeather them. But if you go to the USDA's website, they'll tell you that the USDA themselves estimate that at least 1 million birds per year end up conscious through the whole process. Like for whatever reason, like when they're, supposed to be dunked in that stun bath, they're flailing and they're trying to get away, and they often will just lift their bodies out and not be stunned. And then maybe the blade misses their throats, because again, they're conscious and they're fighting for their lives. And so by the time they even get to that scalding tank, they're still conscious. And this is like part of the unconscionable tragedy of the way we treat chickens in this country is, farmed animals really don't have federal protections for their whole lives, but they do have at least they're at least covered by the Humane Slaughter Act, except for birds. Birds are exempt from even the Humane Slaughter Act. So even that end is there are no legal protections to protect them from like just horrible process. And then that meat, so once they're killed, right? Again, too, I think a lot of people think that the egg and the meat industries are like so separate. They're not. Those chickens end up in the food chain. That meat from those birds is like what ends up in like chicken soup and pet food. It's basically by the time those birds are killed, their meat is like bruised, and it's not the same. It's not what you're going to see in the supermarket, like big breasts under cellophane, but it's like the chicken that's like hidden in foods. But they all end up slaughtered just like chickens raised for meat. Only part of why people consider laying hens to have one of the most miserable lives of all farmed animals is because they are kept alive for so long, relatively. Like most animals in industrial farming, they're just killed as babies, which is a tragedy, but at least their suffering is limited to like meat birds, broilers, Cornish crosses. They are generally slaughtered at like 6 to 8 weeks old. So they're babies. And there's plenty of suffering, for them too, but it's limited by the fact that they're killed when they're so young, whereas a laying hen is kept alive a long time in horrible conditions.
Right. And I think that there's like a large portion of the like vegetarian population, people who identify as vegetarian, who say, I'm vegetarian because no animal should have to die for my food. And I think that there's a lot of evidence that has come out by now that like there really isn't a distinction between, just being a vegetarian and being an omnivore, in that, the egg industry, the dairy industry, all those animals are still killed at the end of having been used and exploited and now being considered spent. Right. So that's like, it's arguable whether or not that's even better, to be honest.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of people go vegetarian and not vegan because they do care about the animals and they do care about suffering.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry.
What?
Look, I think we might just be doing too much, to be honest, because that whole thing that I just said did not come through on Clubhouse because I was still muted on Clubhouse. So we have to either get better at this or just stop trying to do so much.
There's so many buttons, so many buttons.
Yeah. Thank you to the Clubhouse folks who have hung in there with us. And thank you, Priya, for letting me know that my whole little, spiel, my little anti-vegetarian spiel did not go on record with Clubhouse. And I'm not, by the way, anti anybody. It's just that I think that a lot of vegetarians, they mean well, and they actually don't want animals to have to die for their food, but they perhaps don't know the whole story, you know, about how these animals are being made to suffer while their bodies are being used. And then they still end up at the slaughterhouse, just like, you know, the animals that are used for meat. So, you know, and they all end up at the same place. So.
Right.
Yeah, and this actually reminds me of our next question, talking about legality and all that type of stuff. So, do you trust terms like what the egg industry tries to market when they say things like cage-free or organic, or what do those terms really mean? Because we know what those mean, but a lot of people see that and think of like happy, happy chickens on like an egg pasture, blah blah blah. So, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's frustrating because I think that people, you know, look for those labels like cage-free, free range, et cetera, because they want to, because they don't want animals to suffer, and they want to be buying a product that, and you know, that comes from an animal who lived a good life. But the truth is that those labels are largely meaningless. Like the only label that's actually regulated by the government is the certified organic label. And that doesn't really have much to do with animal welfare. That's more like what they're fed. You know, they can't be fed food with like pesticides, and they have to be fed a vegetarian food. But all of the other labels are like, they are voluntary programs that are monitored by third parties. So a lot of them are really useless. I mean, yeah, cage free, all that basically means is, it does mean that they're not living their lives in a battery cage. But it might mean that they're in a shed their whole lives, packed in with tens of thousands of other birds, and they never see the light of day. And there are like different organizations will use those terms and they'll mean totally different things. So just, so it's like those terms don't have any inherent meaning, basically. There are some certifying bodies whose certifications mean more than others. Like the Certified Humane label, I think, is one of the certification bodies that has some, where it does mean something, but it's complicated. It's like, I think Certified Humane has like 3 different levels, and I don't remember now which is which, but basically, even if you have, like one thing I forgot to mention when we were talking about just like the life of a hen that, I'll mention now with the labels, it's like, you can have a label that says cage free and even organic, and the producer is still likely to be debeaking the hens when they're chicks without anesthesia, because when you keep them in those intensive confinement sorts of situations, they will peck each other. I mean, and I can see, again, it's like having my chickens here, they have lots of space, and they'll, and they will peck each other a little bit. Like there's a pecking order. It's very natural, but it never gets serious here because they have space to get away from each other. Like somebody pecks, they're like, I'm the boss of you. That's my food. I'm going to peck you. And then little goes like, and runs away. And that's the end of it. But, in an industrial sort of a setting, you've got 4 or 5 birds in a cage the size of a newspaper, and they start pecking, and like just from the stress, they would probably kill each other. So they debeak them without anesthesia when they're chicks, which then and their beaks are like filled with nerve endings. So it's just like a very sensitive part of their bodies. There's no way that's not just excruciating when it's done, but there's also evidence that like even years after it's done, it's still painful. Like I know people, none of my chickens have been debeaked because most of my chickens come from the meat industry, and they're not kept in those battery cages. Like, so if you see also, here's another like meaningless label. If you see like chicken meat and it says cage free, well, that's just meaningless because they're all cage free, but they're all living in sheds in their own waste for their whole lives. with no access to the outdoors, windowless sheds, right? I mean, they don't see the light of day for their whole lives. So, I mean, as far as like the labels go, I mean, I think, again, there are some certifications that are more meaningful than others. But you really have to do your research and know. And, honestly, the certifications that are meaningful, like the best certification is like, certified humane and animal welfare approved, which is the Animal Welfare Institute. But again, there's like different levels. There's one that I think is like I think the goal, the best that any producer offers is like pasture raised. But even a pasture raised chicken could have been debeaked as a baby. They're still going to get sent to slaughter when they're at a fraction of their natural lifespan. And even I was like also listening to another conversation today about like chickens are their ancestors are jungle fowl. They come from the jungle, and like the idea of even putting them on a pasture in like a big open field, like that has nothing to do with their needs or addressing their best interests. Like a pasture is a terrifying place for a chicken because they are vulnerable to predators in pasture. Like what they like bushes to get under. And I mean, just like you think about a jungle or a forest, like that's the kind of an environment that's natural for them. So even like the gold standard certification, there's still, I mean, I won't say that life isn't better than the life of a battery caged hen, because I think a battery caged hen has one of the worst lives of any being on the planet. But compared to, but it's still not a happy life. And even if it was a happy life, to end it way before your like a natural death or before a natural lifespan, it's that thing of like, if we wouldn't think it was okay to like slaughter our dogs and cats at 2 years old just because we've given them a good life. And again, I think, the certifications, they represent incremental like improvements from something that is so beyond acceptable that, those incremental improvements, any improvements I'm grateful for, but they are nowhere near a good life.
Right.
So, yeah.
Very true. Very true.
Well, I'm bummed out.
I'm sorry.
As well we should be. I mean, we want to be educated about these things, and once you know, you can't unknow.
Right.
Right. So the chickens who you rescued, you were saying that they continue to lay eggs. What happens with those eggs? Like, is there a protocol? Is there something that you do or they do or what?
Yeah. So they tell me to cook those eggs, and then I cook those eggs and I feed them back to them. So, yeah. So, okay. So if I see any sign that somebody is having trouble laying, and again, like I think at this point, I can't remember, like maybe 7 of the hens here have been implanted, and it's an implant that they get every 6 months. And so it's not like one time and it's done. It's like, it has to be done twice a year. But so, yeah, if they show any trouble laying, I get them implanted and they don't lay anymore. The ones who don't have trouble laying, they lay. And usually at the end of the day, I collect all the eggs and I hard boil them. And then the following day, I try to feed them back to like the individuals who laid. So that gets a little bit crazy. It would be easier just to like put all the eggs in their food. But it's like the ones who lay are the ones, and the reason I do this is because they lose so many nutrients, right, when they lay eggs. And so just to give them back the nutrients that they lost, like the calcium we were talking about. And so really, even though most of my chickens were bred by the meat industry to be meat birds, all modern chickens at this point have been so selectively bred and manipulated by humans, that all hens lay an incredibly unnatural number of eggs. So like in the wild, they lay something like 12 eggs a year. And that's for reproductive purposes. Like they lay fertilized eggs, and then they sit on the eggs, and they, until they hatch and they have chicks. But most chickens at this point will lay like, I don't know, 200 to 300 eggs a year. And that just takes an incredible toll on their bodies. So they have a really high incidence of reproductive cancers. And then again, all these egg laying complications. But at the very least, any hen that's laying eggs, if she's not getting her eggs fed back to her, is going to be calcium deficient, and which puts her at risk, like both of osteoporosis and then, bone fractures and things like that, but also puts her at risk of having like thin shelled eggs. And that can be really dangerous because it's not uncommon that an egg will like crack inside of her and becomes infected. And a lot of hen, and there's a really common infection, egg yolk peritonitis, which kills a lot of chickens. So like the last time I had Simi at the vet, actually we did some blood work, and my vet was like, oh my gosh, her calcium level's really good. I never see that in laying hens. And I was like, yep, that's because I feed her eggs back to her. So Simi though, it's funny. So Simi comes in, she tells me when it's time for her to lay her egg. Like I hear her out front calling me, and she likes to lay her egg in her little kennel inside. So I bring her inside, and then when she's ready, she goes into her kennel and she lays her egg. And then when she's done, she calls me very insistently. And I run and I cook up her egg for her real fast. And then as soon as it's cool, she gets it like right away. So the other girls usually like they get a day old egg, but Simi gets a fresh egg.
Okay, Simi.
Wow. There's just so much to this industry, and like and so it's almost as if like rescuing birds is a whole other world. Like it's a whole thing where like there's all these rules and just if not rules, then just like guidelines that you follow that make sense for for taking care of these individuals. But somebody outside of the egg industry or the micro sanctuary industry might be like, okay, why are you doing that? Totally. And so thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it.
No, and if I just say, absolutely. Like I think people hear about people who are not in this world, this micro sanctuary world, or the vegan world, they hear that like I get my chickens implanted so that they don't lay eggs at all, or that I feed the eggs back to them. And people definitely think that that's crazy. But I'm so happy to have found the vet that I have, because she's just on board with all of it. She just acknowledges that that's absolutely what's in their best interest. And the way that we think about chickens and the way that we think about eggs, the way we're all really just culturally programmed from the moment we're like born into the society, is we think about chickens as laying eggs for us. Like the number of people who have said to me, but that's what they're for. They lay them for like they're laying them for you. No, they're not. They're really not. But that is such a deeply ingrained like myth. So it is really,
very weird.
It's very weird. And living with them has been like, it's like such an education to me. And like, it's, just helps me so much to deconstruct all of that, all of those like cultural lies that we've told that like, justify what we do to them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's so many of those. Jamila, can we skip to the last two questions? Because I want us to maybe give people a chance to ask Tracey questions if they would like to.
Okay, just a heads up that we are 5 minutes away to like 7.
That went fast.
That went by really fast. it
Sorry.
feels like 30 minutes. No, look, we are happy to have your information. So you know, you did us a favor. So it's all good. We needed to listen to that. But we are 5 minutes away, so I'm not too sure if we're gonna have too much time left. Did you want to probably start with closing remarks maybe rather than doing a Q&A, or did you want to still do one more question before we head out? From
You're asking me or Brenda?
Oh, Brenda.
Oh, me. Okay. Hey. Yeah, I just so we talked about a lot of the things that the other questions that we had. I guess I just wanted to ask real quick, do you have any, because some people who watch this on our YouTube channel or on Facebook, they might be like, wow, micro sanctuary. Like, you know, I would like to know more about that, or I would like to maybe even have one. So can you tell us what a micro sanctuary is and give any advice that you know, for people who might want to start one?
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so micro sanctuaries are basically spaces where animals who are generally exploited and not generally considered companion animals are cared for. And they are spaces that are like non-exploitative. So like there's a website, microsanctuaryresourcecenter.org, I think. And they have kind of said, they've always said that they don't, I think that they're, you know, not trying to set anything in stone, but they offer some like guidelines for what a micro sanctuary is. And so basically it's like, it can be anywhere as part of it. It's like, it's really about caring for species who are generally exploited, and you know, giving them the care that they actually deserve and need. So it could be chickens, it could be like laboratory animals, it could even be like fishes. And a micro sanctuary can be, I mean, part of it is to be able that we can offer these like liberated spaces anywhere we are. So micro sanctuaries, like I happen to like my sanctuary is getting less and less micro. And I ended up moving to like a very rural property, although I'm really trying to reforest it. And so, which just basically means like I don't mow. But you know, it kind of looks like a traditional farm, but it's that thing of like, chickens don't really like traditional farms. They like jungle. So I am trying to, you know, I'm planting constantly and trying to create shade for them and, you know, whatever. But a micro sanctuary can be like in your apartment in Brooklyn. Like one of the board members, I think actually of the Micro Sanctuary Resource Center, Rocky, she has a micro sanctuary in her apartment in Brooklyn filled with chickens and turkeys and fishes. And the idea is really that like you can do it anywhere with your own resources. So you can rescue one animal and you can have a micro sanctuary. And part of it too, you know, it's so much about transforming the way that society sees these animals. And through like social media, you know, you don't have to have like hundreds of acres and hundreds of animals. Like you can have one chicken in an Instagram page and have a really large impact. And there are always, you know, there are always animals of every species that need to be rescued. So like, I think a lot of people are, you know, we think about with cats and dogs, like adopt, don't shop. I think that's an idea that's pretty widespread in the culture at least, but not so much with other animals like chickens. You know, people are breeding them like crazy. There are always animals of every species that need to be rescued. So if you are interested in starting a micro sanctuary, you know, there are, lots of resources. You know, you could just like start looking online for rescues and check out the Micro Sanctuary Resource Center for some like guidelines and follow people on social media but anybody can do it. And chickens in particular, I'll say like they really lend themselves to living in houses, which you would not think. But they like being in the house, and I have dogs and cats and chickens like roaming in the house, and I love it. They're happy, they're safe, you know, inside. Wow. Yeah. So
did any of the folks on Clubhouse want to ask Tracey anything before we close out? I'm gonna assume that the answer is no, because Okay, there we go.
Dr. Nike is on. Hey, Dr. Nike.
Hi, I learned every horrific thing about the egg industry. I learned something else. So I really appreciate coming into this room and teaching us. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate everything that you do. And yeah, and especially just that, as somebody who's really familiar with the industry, I'm grateful that I could contribute anything. So thank you so much.
Okay.
Awesome. And thank you. Before we close out, where can we find you online?
Oh, okay. So actually very exciting. I just launched a website for the micro sanctuary. So so we are now online as at sweetpeeps.org. So it's sweet because they're sweet, and peeps like the little Easter candies. They're probably not vegan, but sweetpeeps.org. And then I'm also we also have an Instagram page and a Facebook page. And then I'm on Facebook, Tracey Winter Glover, and also the organization, the local group, ARC. It's the website is, so the long name is Awakening Respect and Compassion for All Sentient Beings. The website is arcforallbeings.org. You can also, I think, just type in actually like southernvegan.org. That will get you there as well.
Oh.
So I just really just thank you so much. There's really nothing I enjoy talking about more than chickens at this point. And really just, Afro-Vegan Society, I think, is like one of the most important organizations in the country, in the movement, probably the world. And really. And I'm just grateful to know you. And thank you so much for inviting me to talk with you all today. It's been great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. This was amazing. Fantastic. Okay, cool. Well, everybody enjoy your evening. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll definitely see you in our next live video. All right, y'all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.